So today what we're going to talk about again is the end-to-end asset management through Remedyforce. Really what we're talking about when we say the end-to-end management are those day-to-day tasks that you have to do on assets that come into your environment. So kind of from the cradle to the inception of it, you may have to put the OS down, you may have to do patches, you may have to deploy software. It may be that you have to do a desktop takeover, so a remote control session. Any of these things that you have to do on an ongoing basis is what falls under the scope of end-to-end asset management. The way that we're performing this end-to-end asset management is through a solution called Footprints Asset Core. And what that affords you is your technicians will be inside of, or your your service desk agents will be inside of Remedyforce, and they'll have links that link to our Asset Core solution so they can do that desktop takeover, or they can deploy software, or they can deploy the patches that are relevant for a given machine. So really what we're going to focus on today, as we can see in the graphic, at the core of that is a good understanding of the inventory. So that's all the assets in the environment. We're going to populate those to the Remedyforce CMDB by a variety of different solutions. One is ScanStar for Remedyforce. What this allows you to do is, and the ScanStar for Remedyforce is a product that is developed by RightStar. You put that software on your scanner, and any devices that you have coming into your network that have barcodes, it will enable you to barcode scan all those devices and import them into the Remedyforce CMDB. So what you'll see on this graphic, it talks about receiving those assets, tracking those assets. So if they move from, let's say, the headquarters device and you're going to move them to a different location, I am still able to utilize this scanning software to allow me to do that. And then the last one there is a verification. So really kind of think of that as auditing any of those assets in the environment. Again, that's through our ScanStar for Remedyforce. Another way to get the assets into the CMDB is going to be through Asset Core. That functionality we'll look at in the demonstration. And then you have other ways to get data in. If we're performing the services for you, there's a questionnaire we go through, but essentially you're able to use an integration engine to connect to your existing data sources, bring data in that way. If you have the information in spreadsheets, we can bring that in as well. But essentially what you end up with is your Remedyforce CMDB being your single source of truth. It has all the assets in that repository that you may need to enter tickets against. So with that, let me share out my desktop. So here I've landed inside of my incident console. This should look familiar to many of you. This is the enabler for your technicians to resolve incidents that your user community is entering. So we'll start here with a specific incident. And what you'll see under the service and CI details, so CIs being my configuration item, we'll see the assets that I've imported into the CMDB. Now this one happens to have come in through Asset Core. I'm going to hit the search here. And for this particular user, I only have 3 assets that are assigned to me. But again, because this is my single source of truth, when I switch this to all, I'm going to be able to see all the assets and tie them to this particular incident as it's necessary. So here, let me just close this down. So in the ticket, we have that particular asset. Now, when I want to do the end-to-end asset management, I can see this particular software. The user is requesting a piece of software, so Firefox needs to be installed. As a technician, I'm going over to my agent tools, and what you'll notice are these CI actions, again, configuration item actions. I'm going to click, and what this is bringing up is our integration into Asset Core. So So you'll see there's several functions that I can do as a service desk agent. So that inventory summary is allowing me to see what's installed on this box as it pertains to hardware, software. The remote control I alluded to is going to allow me to do that desktop takeover. But under the advanced actions is where I'm going to see anything that the IT staff has seeded inside of Asset Core, making it available to Remedyforce. So here what I'm going to do is drill into this RightStar directory, and then I'm going to go under my software, and what we'll have at this point is the Mozilla Firefox. So again, my technician is going to be able to distribute, got a timeout there, so distribute this FileZilla, so that Mozilla software, to the endpoint. What this alleviates is my service desk agents having to swivel out of Remedyforce, launch into another tool to perform any asset management. They're able to do it right here from the Remedyforce console. Okay, so here let me go ahead and close this down. And the other thing to note here is this Remedyforce CMDB. So this is where we talked about pulling in all your assets so you have that single source of truth. And here I've got several, again, that came in from Asset Core, that came in from ScanStar, that have come in through imports from various data sources. But this is the aspect that you want to keep up to date. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to go into Asset Core so we can see how we seed Asset Core with the data that needs to be available to my Remedyforce service desk agents. Okay, and so that should have come across. At this point, we're looking at Footprint's Asset Core. Now, many people, systems management has been around for decades. I myself have been doing it for about 13 years. I've used Altiris. I've used the SMS product. I've used a product from Dell. The point is, with Asset Core, and this is what I like about it, is I didn't have very much of a learning curve getting in and familiar with this solution. So you shouldn't feel overwhelmed by Asset Core. There's a lot of stuff on the left, but the good part is over here on the right, because there are the wizards that walk you through any aspects that you need to do. So by way of an example, I said at the beginning that inventory was really critical. I believe in the invite that you got, it talked about maintaining an accurate inventory. And so what you'll see under my wizards is this asset discovery. So I'm going to walk through this one, but just know in your mind that this first one that we're looking at is an agentless discovery, so all the information that's returned is not requiring an agent on that endpoint. As time moves forward and I decide I want to do the remote control or deliver software, at that point I would need to have an agent. But you can see there's a wizard as well to roll that agent out into your environment. If you find you need to deliver software, there's a wizard for that, so it's stepping you through all these processes. So what we'll start with is the asset discovery. And again, this is just a wizard. You can see over here on the left, there are about 11 steps. Various aspects will light up as I choose options here on the right. So I'm going to say configurable. I'm going to hit next. I'm going to change my scan configuration, because what you'll see that lit up there is the ability for me to be very specific about what I want to discover. So I can look at Windows machines, Unix machines, devices that are going to respond to SNMP. I can also look at my virtualization environment. Here I'm going to as well click the schedule, and you'll notice before where there weren't many aspects lit up, now I have about 6. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. The next 2 are just asking me for names. We'll leave those defaults. This screen is asking protocols. So for each of those discoveries that I enabled, which was all of them, I need to enter credentials that will allow me to run my various queries so data will be returned. If you don't put valid credentials, it will still know that something is on the end of that IP. It's just the fact that the interrogation did not occur, and so I won't have much data. We'll see that in the demonstration. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. Here is just who you want me to target. So I said use an existing target list. These are the ones that are available. If I'd opted for a new one, then I'm able to expand my reach and look at a particular IP scan of addresses. Here I'm going to hit next, and the last piece is the schedule. And I'll just leave this up for a second. So sometimes organizations may not perform inventories on a regular basis because it's a little tedious, it's time consuming. But the nice part about AssetCore is you can see how granular this is. I'm able to schedule this. If you think about it, my network devices probably don't change that much. So I may only be looking for network devices, in other words, those things that were responding to SNMP, and I may do that once a week, once a month, whereby my desktops, those Macintosh, the Unix operating systems, those may be a little bit more ever-changing, and so I'm looking at that now maybe daily or when we do software updates so that I maintain the latest version in the repository or as the inventory for a given endpoint. So you can be very specific on how frequently you want to do any of your discoveries. Here I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel, and I'm going to move into the console and look at the discovered devices. And what you'll notice here, I've sorted it by operating system, but as well under the name you can see different icons appearing. So the first one is a good example where I didn't enter valid credentials. And so you'll notice that the type in the operating system is just telling me other and unknown. So when you don't give valid credentials, you can still see that something is on the end of that IP. It just doesn't know what. As we go through the list, though, you can see I've discovered switches. So again, that responding to SNMP. I've got a Macintosh machine. I've got an HP server. It was a part of the mix. Here I've got the Penguin, so I know quickly that's a Linux box. I've got a handful of Windows machines. I'm scrolling towards the bottom. I've got a phone out here. I've got a printer, and I've got Solaris box. Now, right under that Solaris box is a 172 address, and that's part of my virtualization environment. But what you can see on the far right is I've got 13 guests hanging off of that virtual environment. So why that becomes critical, again, in Remedyforce, we were in the incident console. Change management also falls under Remedyforce. So if we go to do some type of change to this 200 address, quickly we can see we are potentially impacting 13 other environments that are hanging off of that. So it's just enabling you with the information in the event that you need to roll back or have some type of contingency plan. That 200 box doesn't come up cleanly. You can see what other machines, environments you potentially are affecting. Okay, so here let me just collapse that down again. This was all gleaned from an agent list discovery, so I just really swept the network, and this is what was returned for me. At this point, you may decide, yes, I need to go ahead and install the agent on a few of these machines so we can do that end-to-end asset management. So we saw that there was a wizard for that. Let's assume I've gone ahead and pushed the agent, and what we're going to do is look and see how granular that information is for a given endpoint. So what I'm doing is going into my device groups and choosing one machine. So here I've landed on this amped client. And you'll see here at the top, or near the top, we've got the configuration of my agent, direct access, so me being able to directly access that machine. The remote control was one of the aspects that we saw in that presentation. This is the desktop takeover. This as well is exposed in the Remedyforce console, so this allows you basically to act as though you're sitting in front of that machine.